Welcome back to the Magpies collection. ASMR. Today I'd like to show the newest piece in my antique book collection and talk a little bit about another incredible, influential 20th century artist, Arthur Rackham. Now both of these books on this table are illustrated by Arthur Rackham. This is a later copy of his Irish Fairytales illustrations. You can see it's still really beautiful and indicative of his style, but printed much later in 1968. And then this on the right is an original printing from 1909. So I'd like to do my normal look through it, check the condition of the book, see if I think there are any worrying signs about putting it in with the rest of my collection, and just appreciating some of the amazing art that we have here. To tell you a little bit more about Arthur Rackham, he was one of the preeminent illustrators for the British Golden Age of book illustrations from the late 1890s up through about the First World War. He originated as kind of a newspaper and magazine illustrator, black and white line work, and then became very, very well known for his style of fairy tale creature illustrations that became highly influential throughout the 20th century. Let me see if I can grab all of the, I would say, more prototypical illustrations here. Flip through. Oh, I think we missed one right here. It's very cute. But here you can see his typical style has these really fluid, very windy, mobile, airy kind of lines. A lot of dark line work as well, and color throughout. I'd say this is perhaps more the tone that I think of, very moody. I think some quotes about him would say that he's very mysterious and magical, but in somewhat of a threatening or foreboding sense. He did a lot of illustration of fairy tale and fantasy novels, so this is Irish fairy tales, but he also illustrated the original Peter Pan in Kensington Gardens, Rip Van Winkle, some versions of various other collections of fairy tales, and then this beautiful, beautiful book right here, Undine. This is a very fragile book, so I do have a brace here, but looking at this copy here, Undine was a very popular 19th century novella by the German author Friedrich de la Motte Fouquet, and it was in many ways the predecessor to The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen, which is perhaps the better known story today, but it has a lot of similar elements. The mermaid who falls in love with a human, and then tragedy ensues and she goes back to the foam from whence she came. So I think Arthur Rackham really captures that beauty while also slightly menacing, foreboding, feeling, as well as the movement that's so evocative from water. You'll see a lot of his creature illustrations. He's very well known for that. And they were highly influential for a lot of filmmakers as well. So Rankin Bass, Hobbit from, I think, the 70s, took a lot of inspiration from Rackham's design, as well as Guillermo del Toro. He cited Rackham as a particular inspiration for Pan's Labyrinth. I think Jim Henson is another one where you can see a lot of those sensibilities, these really kind of scrungly creatures and gnarled, organic shapes, an almost alien kind of a fairy tale. So here we have these beautiful end papers. I can see some foxing throughout, and the binding is quite delicate, but nothing too bad here. This is definitely one that I'm glad to have a support for. So we don't put more stress on the book itself. It's also made from, I can see, a thick board. It's coming apart a bit, just from age. We have the title page, Undine, which is a type of creature, not just a name. So I think it comes from the Greek and original Latin as well, little waif, and it was a nymph character that transformed into more of the mermaid that we know today. This book has these amazing, amazing illustrations from Arthur Rackham, full, beautiful colors, reproduced so well from the watercolors here. And I think this is one of those quintessential Rackham images. These sprightly elfin figures, so much movement between her dress and her hair, and the crashing of the water, even the trees blustering, with a sense almost of darkness falling. I think it's just stunning. And then down here you just see little creatures peeking up at our Undine. This is amazing. A lot of copies of this book I have found have these illustrations taken out. So they're just so beautiful, people want to hang them themselves. But we're very lucky to have them still pasted in here. This is Undine outside the window. Here you can see his amazing line work, almost an illuminated manuscript style of these beautiful, beautiful nymphs. Undine by de la Montfouquet, adapted from German by W.L. Courtney, London, 1909. We do have some foxing, but for a book that's about 115 years old, I think it's still in beautiful condition. We do have many illustrations here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And of course, these beautiful little black and white illustrations throughout as well. Undine, this is the story of the knight Hildebrand, of Ringstetten, and of Undine, telling how the knight wedded with a water sprite, and what chance therefrom, and how the knight died and was buried, and how Undine returned to her element beneath the Mediterranean Sea. I won't read any of the story itself, but hopefully we'll get a little bit of the story from the illustrations. But I do just want to point out all these amazing little artworks. We have rose bushes, thorns, and all these water motifs. I think it's just stunning. And another amazing full-page illustration. And this is really what I think of, that slightly foreboding, murky darkness beyond which you see just little glimmers of the fairy world. So we have these little goblins here, and then up in this nest we have a spooky looking crow or a buzzard, and these little creatures, so eyes just popping out of this moody darkness. Just amazing, amazing. Now these are all pasted down, so they're printed separately with a novel printing process at the time to be able to execute these amazing, vibrant, watercolor-like colors, really true to the original printing. And they're pasted down onto these pages within the book itself. And you can see the glue is a little bit breaking down over the years. So we'll be quite careful as we flip all of these pages. Inside, I would say the book looks a lot cleaner in those couple of end pages. Pretty bright. The string holding the pages together looks pretty good. So I think it's mostly that spine. It's just very delicate. This is quite lovely, isn't it? This is Arthur Rackham, 09. And his beautiful, beautiful mermaids bursting out of the foam. Really gorgeous. This is my first original Arthur Rackham book, so I'm quite excited to have this join my collection. As you saw, I do have a later 60s copy of another, which is still in itself vintage. But I think there's something just so magical about the original printing, and seeing these full page illustrations pasted in. There's just a different feeling to these books, so I'm very excited to have an original as well. A beautiful little girl clad in rich garments stood there on the threshold, smiling. This one's really gorgeous. You can see his mastery over fabrics, the almost translucence, and the billowing as they're bunched up in her hands. It's just really gorgeous. And this weak light fluttering over the edges of the mountain and the lake. Really lovely. As you can tell by his real mastery, Arthur Rackham is highly revered, and thus he's also very collectible. So these are not cheap, these original printings. So something that I'm growing my collection rather slowly. But I really love illustration work, as you can probably tell from a lot of the videos on my channel. So I do a couple of illustrators like him, Kay Nielsen, Shelly Awan, that I'm really excited to build a much larger collection of over time. Oh, look at this. This is just amazing. Look at her hair, mimicking the seaweed with little flowers, school of fish. I hope you can kind of see some of the vibes that this, similar to Pan's Labyrinth and Labyrinth, The Dark Crystal, all of those kinds of creature films as well. I love these colors. Really gorgeous. How Undine was found again. He saw by the moonlight, momentarily unveiled, a little island encircled by the flood, and there, under the branches of the overhanging tree, was Undine. Oh, each one, I think, is just more spectacular than the next. This one may be my favorite so far. Again, this like impish little face, and just the hint of a braid, and just the motion. She's resolute, and then you have the movement of the whole world around her. It's just amazing. Her, with the swirling water, rushing wind, her clothes beating about her, her hair fluttering in the back. Just the hint of a moon, just incredible. So moody, so beautiful. You can like feel it and hear it, the howling of the wind, the rustle of the leaves. Just amazing. So this here's a little worry. This looks like it could be some mold setting in. Now this book doesn't smell very mildewy, so I probably will just put it straight into my collection, but it is probably one that I'll just keep an eye on. I don't do anything super invasive with my books. Some of them I do put in a big Tupperware box with some baking soda, just to kind of pull out any of that smell, but I don't do anything super destructive inside as well. I'm certainly not trained, and I don't want to risk any more destruction. So something like this, I'll just check, see if it spreads. But overall, the rest of the pages look pretty nice inside. The knight took the beautiful girl in his arms and bore her over the narrow space where the stream had divided her little island from the shore. So pretty, and really dark, moody lines, and even the whorls in the bark. Everything has so much motion to it. I think it's so lovely. And the way he depicts water. Amazing, so gorgeous. This must be Hildebrand, our knight. These pages look good. So it looks like that must... Ooh, I spoke too soon. Looks like somebody splashed something in here a long time ago. must be the source of that staining, but looks like it must be rather old. Maybe at some time there was a little bit of molding, but we'll keep an eye on it. I don't want to do anything drastic. You could use, I've heard people use pure ethanol, but I wouldn't do that necessarily on the inside of a book. Perhaps on like the top, just a single end paper or something like that, but you do risk fading the book, breaking down the paper, breaking down any kind of dyes or inks for illustrations, so not something that I would take very lightly. It looks better here. He held up the gold piece, crying at each leap of his false gold, false coin, false coin. Guesses that's some little creature. Yes, a little gnome type creature. And look at this up here, these little guys. Almost there's an owl, and then something a little more fantastical than an owl. I really love that. It's like it's morphing out of the natural world into something a little more alien and magical. This is amazing, gorgeous horse here, bursting out of the dark forest. As we get farther through the book, I'll ease this scarf down a little bit. Hopefully that will allow you a good view still. At length they all pointed their stained fingers at me. He's great. Yeah, I think you can really see that Rankin style Hobbit influence here. These amazing gnarled creatures coming up from the ground. Very classic fairy, living down in the burrows. And even the trees almost look like monsters. Really gorgeous. Really gorgeous. So this was originally published in German in, I believe, 1811. So it does predate the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale, which I believe is from the late 1830s. And it was wildly popular in the English-speaking world as well. So I think it did kind of kick off a fad for nymphs and tragic mermaid stories. I know that this author, this is really gorgeous, this author did have a variety of other different fairy tales and romantic fairy stories, but I think this is the only one that's really survived the public consciousness today. So even if folks don't know the author, they may still know Undine. And of course it survives in the more famous Hans Christian Andersen version. Ah, I see we've lost that tissue covering, the protective covering over this illustration. And you can see got a little bit of damage to this printing here. This one's amazing. Again, I love that movement, the scraggly brush, just really beautiful. I'm just very happy all of these pasted illustrations have survived and carried on with this copy. As you can see, a lot of them are lifting off, so they're quite delicate. A wedding. So I haven't spoken much about the story, but Undine is a water spirit who they do not possess human souls. So one of the only ways for them to get a soul is to marry a human. So she falls in love with the knight Hildebrand and she marries him. But if ever he insults her by a body of water, she gets called back to the element from which she came. So she gets pulled back into the sea foam. So very similar to the Little Mermaid story. And I love that in this they made her very wild. She really feels like an element of water. She feels unpredictable and perhaps a little more dangerous as well as beautiful, which I think is very in line with the element of water. So now we are actually over halfway through, and I can tell this is a little bit delicate here because we have those thick pages it's folding. So I may actually switch our books here just to brace it on the other side. Okay. I hope that didn't mess up your view too much. You can do a little scooch of everybody. Try to keep this a little centered. There we go. It's probably a bit less bright. So apologies there. I can try to put this little book of poetry underneath. There we go. Hopefully that still gives a good view. Ultimately, my first aim is not to cause any further damage to this book, so sorry that may lead to a slightly worse viewing experience, but I hope you understand. This is amazing. I think this is so evocative of like the early Smog illustrations. So cool, right? So we have this scraggly looking dragon. Look at his feet, amazing claws. This really gorgeous creature work. These are beautiful thick pages as well. Really gorgeous. Yeah, you can see here. Beings such as we can only gain a soul by a union of deepest love with one of thy race. A soul I now possess, and my soul thanks thee, O my beloved, and will ever thank thee if thou on thy part makest not my whole life wretched. For what thinkest thou will become of me if thou avoidest me and drivest me from thee? Little niece, said Culeborn, forget not that I am here with thee as a guide. I wonder if this is Caliborn? Yeah. This one's much more vibrant, I would say. She's come out of the darkness and the wilderness and a little more domesticated, maybe. But look at him, isn't he great with this waves of cloak? Really, really gorgeous. They're quite fun. How they fared in the city. So he's taken her back to the human world, along the Danube. And Bertalda, I believe, is another girl. And I think he, the knight of our story, is unfaithful to our nymph and takes up with Bertalda, and that is the affront that makes her lose her humanity again and go back to the waves. So that's echoed in the Hans Christian Andersen, where instead of choosing her, the prince chooses a human girl. And so she dies rather than take her revenge on him. I think she's quite beautiful. I love the clothing here, these amazing sleeves. And the town behind her, quite lovely. So she of course represents the human world, civilization. And Undine is kind of that raw, untouched, organic beauty. Fair was the morn and gay the flowers, the grasses sweet and tall. But there on the verge of the glassy lake was a pearl outshining all. What glitters there amid the grass, a blossom white as snow? Or is it a gem of heavenly light fallen to earth below? Oh, dear. So here is the betrayal. Hast thou a soul, cried she. Hast thou indeed a soul, Bertalda? My friends, quoth she, I see that you are troubled and angry, and truly, God wot, ye have marred my happy feast with your bickerings. But in sooth I know not of your foolish ways and your harsh thoughts. Nor indeed am I fain through all my life to become acquainted with them. No fault is it of mine that the matter hath turned out so ill, but believe me, and ye will, the fault may very well be with you, little as it so appears. Wherefore I have little to say, but one thing I must say. I have spoken naught but the truth. I cannot, nor I will not, give you proof beyond these words of mine, but I declare it to be so. He told me of it, who lured Bertalda from her parents into the water, and who afterwards placed her on the green meadow and the duke's path. Dramatic. She hath a mark like a violet between her shoulders, and another like it on the instep of her foot. to the beautiful moody illustrations. She is in this dark, foreboding forest. Quite lovely. I think she's being chased by Culaborn, who, of course, is one of those fairy spirits on the side of Undine. It was Undine herself who, as the moon swam clear of the clouds, was seen standing on the heights above the valley. 'Twas she, in sooth, who rebuked and threatened the floods below, and the menacing column of water vanished, murmuring and muttering, and the streams flowed gently away in the moonlight. Like a white dove, Undine flew down from the height. She laid hold on the knight and Bertalda, and bore them with her to a green and grassy spot on the hill. There she refreshed their weariness and dispelled their fears. And when she helped Bertalda to mount her white palfrey, they all three made their way back as best they might to Castle Ringstetten. So despite all of that, she's saving them from the wilds. Soon she was lost to the Danube. So she saves the two of them and then returns to the ocean. Isn't that spectacular? It's so lovely. Again, each illustration I think is my favorite, but this one's really spectacular. The rushing of the water. Her hair like seaweed. As she gives up the world of man, goes back into the depths. Could see Undine beneath the crystal vault. Amazing. And here she is, weeping down at the bottom of the ocean, mourning the life she had and lost. Fish, trees almost. It's really gorgeous, gorgeous colors. I might have a cat come say hello right at the end here. That is all of those beautiful illustrations. I can't even say which one is my favorite. They're all so magical, but perhaps this one here, which as I said is very, very loose. Very, very delicate. We hope you enjoyed having a look through this amazing 115-year-old book and celebrating some of the beautiful, moody work of Arthur Rackham. Thank you for joining me. And goodbye. Goodbye.